Hey everybody, it's Belinda Pruyne of Business Innovation Group, and I'm here with one of our newest members, Ms.
Hi, Kristin Seeley.
There we go. I want to get things going here, and to do that, I want to make sure people can hear me, because I know a lot of times we jump on to Facebook Live and we forget to turn the sound on. So can somebody just shoot me a comment below that says, yes, we hear you, we're good. And I will look for those comments to come our way. All right. Well, I know we are right at the top of the hour as well. So those of you that are with us, can you just put in the comment box, can you hear us? That's what I need to know. So we're good to get going.
I see yes.
Yay, we can hear you. Hey, Lois, how fun that you're with us. Love that. Okay, so I wanted to take a second and introduce Kristin. She is one of the newest members to the Business Innovation Group Leadership Advisor team. And Kristin and I worked together for a number of years, way back when, back in the day. And one of the things I loved is I got to watch her listen, guide, advise numbers of people in their careers, helping them achieve the desired level of success they had, right? Not everybody wants to do the same thing, but Kristin really had a gift for listening and making sure that she supported them in making that happen. So she is an amazing addition to our team, and I'm stoked to have her back. Exactly. We also have another new member of our team, June Ballotine, and I had a Facebook Live with her last week where we addressed a question or two that you all sent in. If you want to know more about any of us in that regard, you can go to the website at businessinnovationgroup.com. But before we get going here, I wanted to take a second and there we go. All this technology, it's fun to learn. And explain why we call ourselves leadership advisors. The reason we do that is because there are times that we partner with a company or an individual and we act as a consultant. And there are times that we come in and we'll act as a coach, right? They need some assistance or support in elevating their leadership, their role in what they're doing. And there's times that we act as a confidant. So if I were to say we were a consultant, I'd be leaving out part of what we do, and vice versa with any other combination. So we're leadership advisors, and all three of us have done this throughout our entire career with individuals around the globe. So a leadership advisor is a consultant in your hip pocket, a coach in your hip pocket, and a confidant by your side. So that is why we call ourselves leadership advisors. Okay, now the other thing I want you to know is that we work with principles that we call big picture leaders. And it's not just leadership. It's where profit meets principle and leaders build beyond the bottom line. That is where an industry leader comes from, is that winning combination. And any of you can go to bigpictureleaders.com, not now, hang with us now, but bigpictureleaders.com and get these principles. The first 5 principles are all about who you are as a leader. And the second 5 principles are about how you bring that leader to life. So people are going, I want to work with you. I want to buy from you. I want to partner with you, right? It's how you stand out. Okay. Now, we're going to address some questions that were sent in, but I wanted to let you all know that any of you that have a question that you would like us at Business Innovation Group to address for you, all you have to do is send it to info@businessinnovationgroup.com. info@businessinnovationgroup.com. I just put it up on the screen for you all to see. And you what?
Fancy, Belinda.
Oh, yes, we're very fancy at Business Innovation Group. So that's there for you. Or if you want, throw a question down in the comment section here. And if we can get to it while we're live today, we will. And if not, we'll address it in another Facebook Live or get to you directly. So that's all of the homework in that regard. There was a theme to the questions that you all sent in. And it really all kind of resonated around, I'm getting passed over for promotion. I'm not getting the respect I want. How do, all of these things. And so when I looked at what was underneath these questions, I recognized that a lot of this is having to do with Well, what I say is the level of success you will achieve is directly connected to your level of self-awareness. And it's a big deal, right? It's a game changer for people's careers. And I wanted to give you an example. So I'm going to do 3 quick examples. So let's say the role you played as a child was a perfectionist, and you had to be a perfectionist, do things perfectly to get that recognition or love, right? And then you bring that into your career or into your business. Well, if you're not hip to what you're doing, you're not going to be a good leader, because you're either going to browbeat your team to do it your way, or you're going to ignore your team altogether and just do it yourself. Now, that was the con to that role. The pro to that role is that as your boss, as the person that's hiring you, that tells me you're going to do whatever it takes to get that job done, and you're going to strive for excellence. If you're not aware that you're playing this, that you're bringing this into your work life, it will interfere. But if you're conscious, you can catch yourself and go, oh, does anybody else have an idea of how we might address this? Let's really brainstorm together, right? As bringing your team together. So that's one example. Being a diplomat. Being a diplomat is great. But if you bring that into your work life, and that is the only modality that you really work with, your truth gets lost. You get lost. So here you're trying to elevate your position, and you're just becoming vanilla. And like I said last week, while vanilla is one of my favorite flavors of ice cream, it is not what you want to be in business, right? Now, the pro to being that diplomat is you can diffuse a situation or have a difficult conversation with somebody and not ruffle feathers or, set people off. And this was my thing. Diplomat was the thing that I did, and I got lost. It was really interesting. So I had to become aware of how that was tripping me up. All right, another example. You are the family comedian, right? You're the one that took responsibility for breaking that tension, keeping everybody safe. Well, you bring that into your work life, and it's not your responsibility to take care of the world, right? So you trip yourself up and you get yourself involved in things that you don't need to be involved in. And the pro of it, though, is you know how to diffuse that situation and bring everybody together to ease the tension, but to bring them together to solve problems. So I hope that some of these are resonating with you, or maybe you're recognizing yourself in some of these. But Kristin and I are going to share some stories that we've encountered throughout our career that will also help bring this into the forefront for you all. And KK, I would love to start off, if you're willing to go there. When we talked about this, you shared a personal story. Would you be open to doing that now?
Of course. So some of you who know me know that I am the responsible one. And just to give it a little bit of context, how you become the perfectionist or the comedian or the responsible one, to share with you, when I grew up, I was a latchkey kid from Queens. I was a single child to an only child to a single mom, and I had to become very self-sufficient and independent at a young age. So I also had to learn to be trustworthy. I never wanted to disappoint my mom and make things harder than it was for her. So without realizing it, I made myself the responsible one. And as an adult, looking from a business point of view in the workplace, my bosses knew that I would be successful. I would be getting it done. They could trust me. I was efficient, reliable. I could work independently. And it's hard to imagine that being the reliable one would have a downside to it. However, when that's your way of being, when that's how you exist, the downside to that is it's not okay to make mistakes. You never want to disappoint somebody. And that's not how we exist. We're human beings. Of course, it's okay to make mistakes, but it was too personal to me. I was always fixing things and trying to make things better instead of really listening to people. Didn't even realize I was doing that. As a responsible person, I always had to look good. I was a designated driver. I was the one they sent in. I was always being right. That's the downside to it. And that can be off-putting, especially in the workplace. And I'm sure nobody else does that.
Nope.
But I was so focused on keeping the wheels on the bus that I just was unaware of the impact that I was having on people. Not that it was horrible, but there was an impact completely hidden from my view. When I became aware of it and began to transform that, the first thing I did was just try to be present. I did one small thing. I tried to be present with people in meetings when they came to see me instead of typing on my keyboard. So one day, a great example of how it actually worked was a department head, senior person, walks into my office and they're used to seeing me work. And they start talking about a serious complaint or concern that they had. And I stopped what I was doing and I looked at them and I said, I'm sorry, let me give you my full attention. And he just went, oh. And he actually exhaled and he smiled, which was unusual. And he went, thank you. So this is what's happening. And I was like, wow, I just made a difference for that person. So to sum up, that, that listening and not always having to fix and not always having to do the right perfect thing made a difference. So, I'm clear that I was a, respected worker bee and my career would have gone, like this. But once I began to distinguish those things that were hidden from my view, it started to go like this. So that's a good example of how being aware of what's really going on and what's underneath can make a difference.
Yeah. I have to say, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. It was true because being the responsible one and playing the role that Kristin did at work, she was excellent. You would have kept her. Not an issue at all. But this is what she would have done, right? But because she took the time to get in touch with the impact that she was having, she really, truly did go like this. So it's really powerful. And it's all about being willing to take a look. And, that makes me think of, I had a conversation with a senior level executive, and we used to call him Mr. Teflon Man because nothing was his fault. Nothing was his responsibility. I mean, everything just flew away. And he was very talented. I mean, and we cared about him. So I took him out to lunch. And at the end of the lunch, he still wasn't taking in anything that I was saying. And I finally said, look, you're either in the wrong place at the wrong time a lot, or you have something to do with what's going on. And I need you to take some time with that question and figure that out, because it's really hurting you in your position. It's hurting you in your career. You're not going to get the promotions that you want until you really figure this out. And I'm happy to say the next day he came down to see me and he said, I have something to do with it. I'm not clear what it is. Will you help me figure that out? And I'm like, absolutely. Right. So he was willing to go from having nothing, no responsibility for anything, to really taking a look. And he figured it out. I helped him, but he figured it out and made peace with what was going on. And for him, it had a lot to do with, I can't be wrong, because if I'm wrong, I'm no good and I'll get fired and and the ironic thing was, by behaving the way he was on his way to being fired. So he was creating his biggest fear just by a different route, that kind of a thing. So KK.
That actually reminds me, just to jump in for a second, that reminds me of another similar story of kind of a self-sabotage thing. In your office, there was a senior person who came in, and I think they just asked, they said, Belinda, it's time for me to get a raise. And you said, okay, tell me why you should have a raise. And do you mind if Kristin's here? No. Okay, of course. So I listened, and instead of telling Belinda why, what he had done to deserve a raise, because they weren't just given necessarily, he just started comparing himself to everybody else. Well, this one makes this much money and they've been here this long, and this one got promoted before me, and this one over here, and just started comparing himself, and began a little bit of a story about entitlement to what he should have, instead of doing what she asked, which is tell me why you should have a raise. And she stopped and said, okay, I hear you, but I want to be, this is a story about you. You have to tell me what you have accomplished. What is your contribution? That's something I can go fight the fight for you. And I'm willing to do that because you're fantastically talented, but you got to give me more than the comparison game. And I was like, wow, good advice. However, and I learned a big lesson in that meeting as well. But unfortunately, our paths crossed, and 8 years down the road, I encountered the same employee when I was at a different company, and he was applying for a job. And I was like, oh, how are you? How are you? And we were talking about salary. And I said, what are you looking for? And I got the same story. He had not heard what Belinda said about owning his wealth, owning his strengths and his achievements. He proceeded to compare himself to everybody else out there. This one makes that. This one makes that. It was so much noise. I didn't know what he was talking about, and he clearly hadn't listened. So unfortunately, somebody who is incredibly talented can also just be in their own way. And he had no idea he was playing the victim. He had no idea that I think he had it that people take advantage of him, But I also can't put that kind of, for lack of a better word, drama or story or, into a team, because this is not where it stops. It continues in the workplace, right? So, unfortunately, they don't always get the message, but I really wish he had, because we could have really used somebody as talented as he was.
Right. That's a great example of you think about that person, and it's like they must have at some point in their life had somebody overlook them or put them down or do something. And instead of finding their way with that, they've stuck put the flag in the ground, whatever that is, that says, I'm not going to be taken advantage of anymore. I'm going to make sure I'm cared for, which is brilliant. And you absolutely have to do that. And you need to take a look at the bigger picture. And a lot of times that means separating the feelings from the facts, right? Because the feelings rarely lead us to a place of truth in that moment. When you're able to separate that and really look at it from a different perspective, you have the opportunity to see beyond it. So these are little things that people do, and they're not even aware of it, that really just flatline their career. Right. So I'm not saying you have to go into therapy and do all of this, but you do just take a moment, replace judgment with curiosity, because judgment and curiosity can't exist at the same time. It's not possible. So when you notice you're going to a place of judgment, stop and get curious and say, I wonder what's really going on here. What am I doing? Or if you're noticing a pattern, right? Like it was with that gentleman when I said you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, or you have something to do with it. If you notice some kind of a pattern, and it doesn't have to be a negative one, but, what is it you're doing to create that? What is it you're doing to bring that on? And if it is a positive experience, by all means, figure it out, because you can't replicate what you don't know. So really be with yourself and be curious and say, okay, I wonder what it is I do that is pushing me forward and holding me back. I have this thing where I say, we all have a story. It's what we do with our story that says who we are and what we will achieve in life. So my question to you is, are you using your story to action you forward to bigger and better things, or are you using it as your excuse to hold you back? Because the whole point of this, when Kristin and I were talking about these questions that came in, you have more control over the success you achieve than you realize. And with these little bits of awareness that you bring to yourself, if you're a perfectionist, I'm a bona fide, I gotta be honest, that was me as well. And it was scary to be wrong, because it's like, no, it's got to get this out. It's got to be a certain level. And, when I went out and started my business, I dedicated a year to being messy, because I wasn't taking the action I needed to take as a business owner, because it needed to be perfect. Well, that doesn't exist. So today I'm happy being perfectly imperfect, and that kind of a thing. So really take this time to explore you, get curious about you, and then begin to identify the places that you have been in your own way or self-sabotaging, so that you too can achieve whatever level of success it is you want to achieve. And if it's the respect you're going for, or the recognition, or stretching your comfort zone to be able to do the bigger things that you want to do, whatever it is, give yourself permission to do that. Okay. Do you have a parting thought, Kristin, before well, first of all, does anybody have a question? Because I'm using this format that I can't see things. So if you do, you have to post them in there. Go for that. But if not, Kristin.
I did just want to say, if you really are serious about taking it on and you are courageous enough to have that conversation of how am I impacting people, start with that question. How might I be impacting people in a way that I'm unaware? Yeah. And it usually is in an area that you kind of know already that is a little messy and uncomfortable. And as soon as you feel messy and uncomfortable, you've hit it. And if you really want to know, ask somebody you trust.
Yeah. And when you hit it, don't judge yourself. Don't make yourself wrong.
We're human.
Thank you.
You can't not be doing this. There's no way you're not.
Everybody's got something, and usually more than one something, right? So with that said, continue to send your questions to us at info@businessinnovationgroup.com or pop them down here and we'll respond to them there. If you want to get a copy of the principles that we work with, bigpictureleaders.com, go there. They're there for you just to download and have fun. And if you know anyone that you think would benefit from hearing this video, please share it. Because the whole point is to get that out there so people understand they have greater possibility at their fingertips than perhaps they've realized in the past. So with that, Kristin and I wish you nothing but the biggest success possible and the greatest amount of joy along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.